debate. Our next item is appointments to the co-governance and co-management entities. This covers some entities which have an ongoing life but are not enormous in the public debate. Please address us. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Good morning, Your Worship.
Good morning to you, Dominic.
Would you like me to read to the report, or do you want to take it as read, Sue?
I think, and I live in great hope that my members have actually read it. So possibly you could just highlight issues and then be prepared to answer questions.
Thank you, Sam. You'll see that the report covers appointments to 4 entities. We've got the Mutukaroa Hamlin's Hill Management Trust. Councillor Lee just mentioned that a moment ago. Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei Reserves Board, Te Poere o Kaipātiki ki Kaipara, that used to be known as the Parakai Recreation Reserve Board, and the Tupuna Maunga o Tāmaki Makaurau Authority, the Tupuna Maunga Authority. And I've provided there 2 key options. Essentially, you could make, in terms of those, the trust deed and the legislation in relation to those, you could make appointments for all those entities at this meeting. Otherwise, another option is to make some appointments during this meeting and then delegate to local boards to make appointments. And that's been, that would be in keeping with past practice. Going through each of them, the Mutukaroa Hamlin's Hill Management Trust, that's a trust that owns, or that manages and makes decisions about that part of Mutukaroa Hamlin's Hill that's owned by the Crown through LINZ, and as noted before, that's leased to the Auckland Council and then managed as a regional park, alongside the part of Mutukaroa that's owned by the council and also managed as a regional park. Right. Now, there are 2 appointments to that trust, and in the past practice, the governing body made 1 appointment and the Maunga Kia Tāmaki Local Board made an appointment. But there are 2 appointments. The Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei Reserves Board, there are 3 appointments. And I guess just again, the past practice was 2 governing body members were appointed and then a delegation to the Ōrākei Local Board to make a single appointment. There's also a decision to be made today in terms of appointing the deputy chair. Then we'll turn to Te Poere o Kaipātiki ki Kaipara, and this manages the Kaipātiki Reserve out at Parakai, out in West Auckland there. And there are 3 appointments for that co-governance board. And again, just in terms of the past practice, we've had 1 governing body appointed, usually from, of course, from the Rodney ward area, and then the 2, a delegation to the Rodney local board to make 2 appointments. Then the final one is the Tupuna Maunga Authority. There are 6 appointments, and again, in the past practice, there were 3 made from the governing body and 3 delegated to the chairs of 8 local boards with maunga within the areas to appoint 3 more members. But that was the past practice. So that would be my speaking to the report, Sue.
Well, I don't think that we're recommending any changes to the past practice here. If I speak to it, the Mutukaroa Management Trust, 2 councillors offered their interest in that, and Councillor Bartley and Councillor Leone. And so I'll just finish running through them, but Councillor Bartley wants to ask something. Similarly with the Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei board, that seems to be fairly settled. the Te Pōareo Kaipatiki ki Kaipara. Greg Sayers has been there before as a member of Rodney and makes sensible solution. The only one which is likely to provoke much debate, I would have thought, was Tupuna Monga Authority. And we're not quite ready for whoever wants to go on that just yet. So that's where we got to. That's how we've got that one there. So I'll take questions. Councillor Bartley who has a question.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I was trying to text the local board, but does the local board not want their seat on Mutukaroa anymore?
There's been no communication with the local board, with me on that matter, so I can't advise, but I can follow that up.
Okay, so if I carry on there, if we have 2 councillors, that means local board have no space. So if that's the case, then I'll come off so local board can have their space back and leave Karen there. Happy to do that.
That would be fine, but I'll leave that through to this governing body decision.
Okay, well that's kind of you, Councillor Leone. Have you got any views on that?
I just want to say to Councillor Bartley, it's very generous of you. Thank you very much.
It's okay. We were at the Auckland pre-breakfast this morning with Councillor Fletcher, so those vibes are still in me currently.
I'm absolutely sure they're going to bear you in mind when they make that decision. They'll probably choose you, but that is a kind offer, and I propose to accept that as an amendment. Is there any further questions of Dominic before we get into the debate? Oh, yes. Sorry, I've got Filipina and Fletcher in that order. Thank you. Councillor Filipina, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question on D in regards to Tupuna Monga Authority, and I know that previous term the governing body made those appointments, Your Worship, and obviously with the 3 members from the local boards. So really the partai is in regards to why it has now been delegated to the Performance and Appointments Committee. Gilda.
Through Your Worship, all I can really say on that point is that the Act provides for the governing body to make appointments, and that allows, obviously, for the governing body to delegate that, and that's all I can really say. I have no further information.
Further partai that may be to you, Your Worship, in regards to the Performance and Appointment Committee having the ability to approve the 3 governing body members or the Auckland Council members on the committee. Those members who are not on the Performance and Appointments Committee, even though we can attend it, will they be excluded from putting their name forward if they're not on the committee?
No, not at all.
Okay.
It was a streamlining rather than, there was nothing deep in mind and thoughtful about it. It was just a simplifying matter. But by all means, I look forward to seeing you clambering up the mountain there at some stage.
Well, I won't be doing that. This is not a conquering body, so kia ora. Thank you, Your Worship.
I was laughing with you, not at you, just in case you took offence. Councillor Fletcher and then Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I appreciate the opportunity to have Dominic here because these are important positions. Can we have clarity around his understanding of what the role of councillors or local boards are on these co-governance arrangements?
I think the status of the positions, it depends upon which entity. So obviously if you're nominated to the Mutukaroa Trust and then the trust then appoints you, become a trustee, and you have trustee duties as well. There'd be legal issues that the legal team could add to that. But you'd be there as an appointee of the council. If I look at
And on that, I wasn't going to interrupt before, but the draft that is now the regional parks management strategy actually deals in detail on that particular regional park. So, yeah, thank you for that, and that will be a great guidance to those that represent it. Thank you.
And do you want me to go through, again,
Yes,
through?
the roles and responsibilities in terms, at a governance level, of what is required.
So in the case of Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei Reserves Board, I think the appointments to that board, it is an independent statutory board created through Treaty of Waitangi settlement legislation. And so, again, I think that the legals may have a view on it, but my understanding is that once you're appointed to that independent body, you're then responsible for the functions of that body. And in the case of Ōrākei, that's a board that has an administering body managing reserves, and so has those functions. And obviously, when Auckland Council makes those appointments, you carry that knowledge as an Auckland councillor, you carry that into your role. But you do carry out the role as set out in terms of the Act. The same also applies for Te Pōrere o Kaipātiki ki Kaipara. It's also an administering body of a reserve under the Reserves Act. So I think those two are very similar. And the one perhaps that is slightly more specifically worded in terms of its role as the Tupuna Maunga Authority. Of course, there's the Act, the Ngā Mana Whenua o Tāmaki Makaurau Collective Redress Act 2014, and in Section 109 of that Act, it sets out a very clear function and purpose for that board. And so I would point out that really once you're a member on that board, you're an independent member of an independent statutory board, and you have to carry out the functions of that board pursuant to the legislation. And so I think that is a really important point to raise, and a very, very good question to raise by Councillor Fletcher. Because, of course, when a councillor, or say even for a mana whenua member who's appointed onto that board, they may come with preconceptions of their duties to the public generally, or in the case of, say, the mana whenua member, they may have a duty to their particular whakapapa line, their particular iwi and hapu. But when they come onto the board, they have a statutory function to fulfil. And
In much the same way a Director of Auckland Transport, with the separation.
I feel that's quite a good analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good response and explanation to a good question, thank you. It's clear that it is item D that there is attracts the most discussion. I don't even have a huge opposition to it. If that becomes an issue, that it does go back to the whole board either. I'm not. But I'll Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Worship. If I can just make a couple of comments in response to the matters that Councillor Filipaina raised. I didn't foreshadow that this particular delegation would fall to that committee, but if it does fall to that committee, it would be my intention to seek expressions of interest from all governing body members who may wish to be considered for appointment to the Tupuna Maunga Authority, and that those expressions of interest be reported back to the committee. Concurrent to that, I'm going to send out an email to committee members updating them that we will have to convene a meeting of that committee shortly to deal with all matters that have been delegated to it, of which this could be one of them, depending on the outcome of the decision today. And I will not be putting myself forward for consideration as a member of that authority.
Me neither. I have a question for Dominic, though. That's been raised with the question is, can we appoint members of the local can we appoint some of our members to the Tupuna Monga Authority who are not elected councillors?
Your Worship, my understanding of the legislation is that the authority can appoint such persons as, the Auckland Council can appoint such persons as it sees fit to the authority. It could be anyone. There's an example of that already happened over in essence, over in Te Poari o Kaipātiki ki Kaipara, where a community member was appointed by the local board under that delegation. So it was a similar circumstance.
Okay, so that we can, I can rely upon you to point out to the local board members that they can also appoint people who are not necessarily elected officials.
I think it comes down to the delegation there, and of course, in this case, the delegation is to 3 local board members, as determined by the chairs of the local board. So the delegation is for local board members in that case. But so it's the wording of the delegation.
Okay, so just to clarify it then, that the appointed members don't have to be elected officials. We just have the authority to appoint people.
And that's my understanding. It's correct, sir.
Okay? I'm not influencing the debate here. I'm just trying to clarify it before we get round to it. And Councillor Newman, you've ended up with the responsibility to ask for people, both from within the council and from without the council. Thank you very much for your questions. Any further questions? Oh, of course.
So we're not going to decide on the membership today. We're going to take it to performance and appointments. That might take some time to do if you're going to seek expressions of interest from citizens of Auckland. And what consideration, Dominic, what are the implications for the governance at the Tupuna Monga Authority in the absence of at least 3 council-appointed members in the interim? If we don't make those appointments by X date, does the Tupuna Monga Authority, I understand the various iwi have made their nominations, we're giving the go-ahead to the local board chairs, and then there's another 3 that could be delayed. What are the implications, if any, for governance of the authority from now until the point where the Performance and Appointments Committee confirms the final 3?
Through Your Worship, I think it's a very good question. The existing term finishes on the 6th of December this year, but then after that, at this point, we have no members of the authority confirmed for that term. So assuming that mana whenua members made their appointments, that was the 6th, and 3 local board members were appointed by delegation following the resolution as it is at the moment, we'd have 9 members in total, which would be enough for a quorum. But I must point out, of course, that the authority, I'm sure, would want to be a full body, and while there are no meetings planned for this for this calendar year, there is hope for a meeting early in January 2023, and that's quite an important meeting for determining budget matters. And of course that links in with the Auckland Council's annual budget planning process. So that's important to have the full membership as soon as we can.
Okay, so then the question is it realistic that we can delegate this to Performance and Appointments and reach that important deadline of 23 January?
I've forgotten the exact date.
About late January.
It's late January, yeah.
Can we meet that deadline?
I'm sure we can. I wasn't canvassing for a major advertising program looking for this, but I'm aware that during my campaign, the Tupuna Monga Authority rose its head into a major debate in certain areas of Auckland, and whereas the other 3 didn't. And there are people who have emerged who have substantial interest in this, And I was just thinking that perhaps we would give them the opportunity to present. It wasn't a matter of hunting for them. They've hunted for us. And so I thought it might be the opportunity for our committee to at least consider those people and either reject them or enhance them to a degree. But they're very high profile, large group people representing very strong interests in the Tupuna Maunga Authority. And so it wasn't just an opportunity to call for members of the public.
We can't do that. That is not how we do things here. That is not fair to all those concerned. That is not how you appoint people to bodies. That is cherry picking. That is providing preferential treatment. We might do it in the fiefdom of the far north, Mr. Mayor, but we do not do it here.
What was it about throwing little bags at people? Thank you for that comment. In the interest of being adults, Mr. Dewman.
Thank you. What I would like to do, what I give an undertaking is if this particular matter, and I didn't anticipate that this particular appointments would be delegated to the Appointments and Performance Committee. But if it is the case that it is, what I want to do is to get urgent advice as to my interpretation as members of the governing body and potentially, I suppose, but I'd seek further advice on this, or members nominated by members of the governing body, but I stand corrected and get advice from officers. If it is the case that this is delegated to that particular committee, I have an email prepared to update committee members. My expectation is that that committee will need to be convened very shortly, because this will not be the only matter. There is the issue of the enduring panel. There is also the issue of the untimely vacancy at Auckland Unlimited. So there are matters of business that do need to be resolved by that committee, and my expectation is that it will need to meet before Christmas. Thank you.
There is a meeting scheduled for them in early December anyhow, so thank you for that. Councillor Ferry has her hand up, but you can't see it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My queries are in relation also to D. We've just sort of had a bit of my queries answered, but I did want to express some concern with the idea that we might be looking to appoint non-elected members to Tupuna Maunga Authority. I've had quite a bit to do with this issue in my local area as well, and in my previous role, and had a lot of feedback from the community that they do want to see elected members as the council reps. So I'm quite unsure about this idea of potentially allowing for people from outside the elected member cohort to be represented. I'd also note the chair now of Performance and Appointments has indicated he'd not previously considered this coming to that committee. We do have another governing body meeting next week, and we could make this appointment at that committee, at that governing body meeting, if there were some concern about it going there, or if people would feel more comfortable. So I just wanted to put that suggestion there. Can I just clarify through Dominic? My experience in appointments to this has been as a chair or deputy chair of a local board that has a maunga in their local board area. My local board previously had never put forward a nominee, and so we had always taken part in the decision-making process. It's been done slightly differently each of the 3 times, but in a very robust fashion that has called for expressions of interest. And in some cases, I think there were even interviews of people, elected members who were keen and stuff like that. So I have no understanding of what the normal process has been for governing body members to be appointed to this by the governing body. So, and it's not covered in the report. It seems that this delegating it to performance appointments is a change from previous. So could I just understand a bit better what the previous practice has been?
Through your worship, the previous practice has been for the three governing body members to be chosen on the day while this item was before the governing body, and then a delegation was then granted for further three local board members. And I understood that the process, which and it has worked effectively, the process was aimed to try and have three appointees at a sort of general ward councillor level, and then three at a more granular community level, put it that way, and yes, linked to those local boards with maunga within their areas, so that they were in the local communities. So as I said in the report, it was effective in the past, but the point I'm really making is that the law just provides for the Auckland Council to make 6 appointments. It doesn't say who they are, if that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you. So if I could just clarify for those of us who are not on the Performance and Appointments Committee, if it does go to that, rather than being decided by a governing body, as has been the past experience, can I understand, please, perhaps from Councillor Newman, I'm not sure if this is okay for me to ask this, what process would you be using to make sure that governing body members who are not on that committee, in particular those who have maunga in their ward, are given a chance to participate in that decision-making process, please?
Well, yeah, thank you for the question. The first thing is that my expectation is that if D were to be agreed, and it might not be, it might come back to the governing body next week, but if D were to be agreed, the first thing would be to seek expressions of interest from colleagues, both on the committee and who are not on the committee, who wish to be considered for appointment to the Te Puna Maunga Authority. My expectation would be that the meeting would be open to all members of the governing body, that there would be speaking rights. Unfortunately, the terms of reference require that their voting rights will be the privilege of those members who have been appointed in accordance with the terms of reference. But my expectation would be that all members would be entitled to come along and speak and participate in the debate. I'd welcome that. But if it is not the intention, if it's not the preference of this meeting today that it should be delegated to the that particular committee, then perhaps this could be referred back to the governing body for a decision later, for the governing body to make that decision at that point where everybody can vote on it. Your worship, thank you.
Thank you. Can I just further clarify then in terms of the timing issue? If it were to go to performance and appointments as opposed to going to the governing body meeting next week, what would the difference be in terms of timeframes for those appointments to be made, given that that doesn't seem to be a factor here?
Well, if there is a meeting scheduled for the committee in early December, so we're talking a week or two's difference. If the consideration is only elected members of the governing body, then the matter can be resolved by that committee at that time in early December.
Thank you. That can I just clarify then? And sorry, these are probably naive newbie questions about how these committees work. So the committee doesn't need to meet in order to open the expressions of interest. Is that correct? My past experience has been that expressions of interest have had to be passed as a motion from a committee before they could open, but happy to hear otherwise.
Well, I've sought advice and I'm seeking expressions of interest as the chair, and I'd be hoping that people could, there's already an email gone out from me seeking expressions of interest for the enduring pool. My expectation is if this matter were to be delegated to the committee, then expressions of interest would have to be sought as soon as possible, but the matter of the consideration of expressions of interest received is a matter that would have to be resolved by that committee if it was delegated to it.
I have to say that I'm neutral about whether it's sorted out there or at the full board. It wasn't a deliberate thing to cause the Te Puna Maunga Authority to become such a focus of debate. Councillor Fletcher showed interest during the discussions earlier on of being part of it, and Phil would like to talk to us about Phil Wilson, and so I'll let him speak, and then I've got a couple of
Your Worship, I was simply going to comment that I see no issue with calling for expressions of interest. The decision-making appropriately resides with the committee later. We can get the process started in the interests of time sooner.
Yeah, so that answers that, but we can call for interest without having to have a board meeting to get that. And if the meeting of Councillor Newman fails to sort this thing out, we'll revert to the full council meeting on the 15th. Okay. I have questions from your number 3 there, Councillor. I've got Councillor Leone, Councillor Hills, Councillor Fletcher and Councillor Bartley. In that order. Councillor Leone.
Thank you. I'll make mine really quick. The first question was just, given that it's a co-governance model with mana whenua, if we are looking at non-elected members, would we have to run it past them first, is my first question. And secondly, if one of the issues could possibly be that we don't have enough councillors that are interested, which I'm not sure if it is the case or isn't the case, but could we look at local boards, members of local boards to fill that gap, if that could be one of the scenarios?
Well, I think all of those things are possible. There wasn't a clamour of 3 people around the table to get onto this, which was why I asked the question whether or not other people could get in, and the legislation clearly allowed for it. So we left that open. Amongst the noise from the outside were members of mana whenua, actually, to take up one of those. So it's an interesting conundrum. Somehow or other, the smallest things become the largest fruitcakes, but this is it. I'll go to Councillor Richard Hills next.
Thank you, Mayor. And I do think this has become unneededly probably complicated, but I think the concern is, and I know in my community with Tūmaunga, the preference has always been for, because it's co-governance, to be 6 elected members and 6 of members appointed by mana whenua. So I think this is I'm not worried about whether it comes to GB or to appointments. I think Councillor Newman will do a good job of whatever comes to him, but I think the concern around this table is the lack of clarity around whether those are councillors, because they've always been councillors, and I would imagine we'd have to make a decision now to put it out to the full public for an independent person to be put on, or independent people, because I did, unless there wasn't, but as far as I knew, there were enough or more councillors than the 3 needed.
Well, there weren't, but I'm sure we can rustle up 3 if we need to. But you wanted people who are really, really, really interested rather than just being shoved onto something or other to fill a gap.
Okay,
and that was where the thought came that, okay, if that, it's not an obligation, I want people who had a real interest in it. And so that was what I was trying to do. I wasn't really trying to offend people around here, although I've managed to do that.
Thank you.
Councillor Fletcher, who did show real interest in it, perhaps has changed her mind.
My question doesn't relate to this delicate matter of process. My question through you, sir, is to Dominic. Dominic, the concern that I've got is on what the effect of any delay might be. We know that the authority took consultation in response to the Court of Appeal, and as best I understand it, the Manga Authority, they have arrived at a position around sometime the middle of this month. So are there any matters that potentially are controversial within that decision from an operational perspective that we should be aware of at this time? If there should be a delay.
I think, again, through Your Worship, if there were a delay, I think there wouldn't be an impact on operational matters in the sense that in relation to decisions that have been made in this last month. So yes, there was a decision made on the 11th of November by the authority in relation to its integrated management plan. And so that decision would cause operational activities to begin at the time that's necessary for those activities. But it's not a matter that would be require governance input.
I perhaps need to repose my question then. Are we going to hear the chainsaws starting before we've actually got the members appointed to the Manga Authority, whether it's through the Appointments Committee or whether it's through the governing body is irrelevant? I just want to make sure that this does not continue to be a matter of some controversy, having been at the beginning when there was great unity around this, and it's been disappointing to see the controversy that has subsequently taken place. So I need some guidance from you as to whether you believe that there are going to be matters that we should be aware of.
It's difficult to actually respond in terms of the operational side of matters because, of course, we've only just had the governance decision made. That said, I would have thought that, as I say, that the matters of governance, the key matter coming up is the operational plan, and that really should be dealt with in January. And so that's probably the only matter in terms of governance input. I'm sorry, I'm not quite answering a question, but I don't have information on the operational.
So the authority's consultation response, you tell us, was delivered on the 11th of November, and most of us probably haven't had the opportunity to understand what that entails. It would be pleasing to think that the matters that necessitated the Court of Appeal and others have been resolved.
I think there was a query about the whether the IMP has met the requirements of the Court of Appeal decision, and all I can really say about that matter is that we've seen the authority hold a consultation process and put forward a proposal. Heard, I think the authority reported 1,500 submissions were made, and 100 or so people were invited for verbal submissions. And my understanding is that the authority has made a decision which included amendments as a consequence of that consultation. And I'm sure that in terms of the operations, that will require some time to go through to determine what would be the impact of all those amendments. But there were clearly amendments made by the authority in response to the submitters.
I get the point of being raised by Councillor Fletcher. I'll get to you in a second, but there is an element of risk, and you're asking Dominic to see the predictions about the future, which are always very hard. I'm quite, if I recanvassed the board today and found 3 people who did want to get onto it, we could make a decision right now. And it doesn't rule out the ability to change that later on. But I didn't have 3 people interested.
That's because you already had a list here with names.
No. When I spoke to you, you said, what are you really interested in? And I recorded what they were really interested in, and everyone is interested in something else, but now they're interested in this, which is what happens. And so I'm not being judgmental about that. But if you would the meeting like me to suggest, to ask if there are 3 people here. Councillor Filipaina has shown interest, Councillor Fletcher has shown interest, but if the body language is interpreted, Councillor Leone showed some interest, but then decided she didn't have that much interest in it, and I think Councillor Furley. Okay, it was interesting looking at that there, that there was, they actually haven't listed all the Monga anyhow, actually, in this list here, so there are other Monga, but they're not in the authority, but what the hell?
Worship, can I suggest, and I know that this is, can I suggest that maybe this be deferred for consideration of the next governing body? Because, well, sorry, do I have the floor or not?
Well, look, I mean, this is growing into a Monga of its own.
It certainly is, yeah.
Could I risk offending those who are particularly pedantic about behaviour to see if there are 3 people who just put their hands up at the moment showing some interest? That looks like 3 to me. Do I have the support of the room here to make a bold decision and upsetting those who worry about things being done in other places, that we could do this? And we do have the ability to review these in 6 months like we always do anyhow. So on that basis, I will take a nomination from Councillor Bartley, Councillor Filipaina and Councillor Leone to make a decision about that. Now, you can all say aye or no to this, but if you don't want me to, are you quite sure that you don't want to take up that opportunity?
I put up conditional interest on the basis that there would be the opportunity for addressing the matters that have proven to be controversial. I feel that this matter would be better dealt with giving another week to find those who may also want to put up their hand if we're going to deal with it in this way. So if your decision is to go with recommendation through the governing body, I think the final decision will be improved by giving it a week for people to reflect on whether their interest can
That's
be
a reasonable point as well. Councillor Turner, do you wish to have something to say there? Oh, sorry, Councillor Butt, I'll get back to you, but we're talking about you now. You put your hand up. Councillor Turner? No, no. In view of this, what I think is yet another compromise floating through my mind at the moment. We've now got 3 people around here interested. We'll put their names forward to Councillor Newman's committee, who will make a decision next week. Would that be all right? No?
It's just more work. Just put his head out of the way.
Sorry, Your Worship, just a comment. If you need a mover or a seconder, and that the governing body, as per your request, I will either move it or second, if you wish to move it, Your Worship, that the 3 members who have indicated at this authorised governing body meeting be on the Tūpunamonga Authority. I will either move or second it, Your Worship.
That's Turner. No, he said yes. Turner, you want to say something?
I don't understand all these things. I'm fresh here. But in the Waitakeris, Kauri dieback is a huge problem, and it's a political problem. And there's a huge public interest. And I do know that there's a huge public interest in the Mongas, because I was approached during the campaign period from people way outside my area, and I talked to them a lot but kept my distance because it was way outside my area. Mr. Mayor, I do think this also shows what Councillor Darby was talking about, as in how big this super committee is, or whatever he calls it, is. And Sir, parks are a very important thing to the people of Auckland, and the parks themselves are not broken, but the politics around them in a lot of cases is needs a lot of very careful consideration. So, yeah, I just want to see us not rush this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Bartley, you were up for saying something or other.
Thank you. So the Te Puna Maunga Authority is about 14 maunga that were given back to mana whenua under the treaty. So it's not about the ones in Waitakere or other ones, it's about these 14 maunga that were given back to mana whenua Māori under the treaty. And part of that deal was co-governance, that they be administered together with mana whenua and council. Council being governing body, local board, elected representatives, not third parties, even though it may be some kind of loophole there. And that is what I'm worried about. It has to be council. You've got 3 of us already saying that we want to go back on, and 1 that wants to come on. I didn't put my name forward because I just saw this list and saw that there were already some people nominated. So I didn't want to impose on that because I'm, all good with sharing roles. But since that's not the case, I'm happy to go back on. If some councillors think that I didn't do a good job on there, then, all good, you're entitled to your opinion. But the role on there is to do what is best for the maunga. And that's the conflict that you will face on there as a councillor, is people expect you to do what's best for ratepayers, to do what's best for budgets, or, groups that lobby you hard to save the things they want you to save. But your role is to look at what is best for the maunga. I do want to go back on because I have 5 in my area. I am passionate about Māori's ancestors because I have a niece and nephew who are Māori, but also I'm hesitant to go back because you encounter so much racism from the public, and that was my cause for hesitation. So I know that there's a lot of issues going on. I know it's been divisive, but, I like what you're trying to do, get everybody to work as a team and work through things together. So I am trying to be more conciliatory, is that right, on there. But again, it is about what is best for the maunga. And it's not to Dominic to answer these questions, it's to the whole Te Puna Maunga Authority to answer it, that you rightly raised, Councillor Fletcher, but my understanding is Dominic's here to talk about the governance structures and our appointments, and not to answer for the whole Te Puna Maunga Authority, because those are hard questions that you asked. Thank you.
My understanding, Dominic, is that the legislation asks for them to look after the maunga for both mana whenua and for the public. It's not just for mana whenua, so that's where...
No, I never said it was just for mana whenua. I said the best interests of the maunga, because the maunga are actually ancestors to puna. That's your role.
You want to answer that, Dominic, and then we'll go to Councillor Lee, Councillor Walker and Councillor Hills. And then...
It's certainly true that...
long enough lunch. No.
I'll be trying brief then, Your Worship. It's certainly true that the Section 109 of the settlement legislation sets the functions and purpose of the authority, and so it essentially has 2 parts. The first part is in every decision that members make, they have to have regard to the historical, archaeological, cultural, spiritual and other interest of mana whenua in the maunga, and so That's the first, and I paraphrased the wording from memory, but that's the first part of it. And the second part is they also have to have regard to the fact that the maunga are owned by mana whenua and held in trust for mana whenua and the other people of Auckland.
Thank you for clarifying that. Councillor Lee.
Yes, Mr Mayor, previously I requested a briefing to update us all on legislation and deeds which govern our responsibilities. The Local Government Auckland Council Amendment Act 2009, the Hamlin's Hill Trust Deed, which goes back to about 1998, and also I think we need to have a refresher on the Ngā Mana Whenua or Tamaki Makaurau Collective Redress Deed, because the Maunga Authority has become, whether we like it or not, highly controversial. There are problems in terms of the rights of tangata whenua as opposed to mana whenua, and that's working its way through the High Court right now. We should perhaps be even briefed on that. It wouldn't hurt. But also, I understand $1 million of ratepayers' money has been spent by this council supporting the chair of the Maunga Authority in ongoing litigation, went up to the Court of Appeal. So obviously we can't not be concerned about this, and therefore it's important that we get as much background information about this and our responsibility and our rights regarding the settlement. The settlement returned Maunga to a corporate entity, not to tribes or iwi, hapu or whānau, to a corporate entity. And I believe that the complexity has arisen because the council itself, as part of the treaty settlement, was required by the government to fund everything, to maintain the maunga and to fund the authority itself. So we have a responsibility, and our ratepayers have a stake in this, and their rights are mentioned, I believe, in the redress deed. So it's important that we have a refresher on the details of that particular piece of legislation and the other ones. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Walker, please.
I'll be brief. I'll follow on from Councillor Lee, and I agree with his sentiments. There is no question that there has been discord over the management of the maunga, and that has been reflected in a recent court judgment around the necessity to consult with Aucklanders around, in a particular case, the removal of trees that may be important to many Aucklanders, including myself. So I have a real concern that we should give this adequate time. I would like some opportunity as a councillor to consider whether I want to put my hand up, and there may well be others. And there may be other people, if you have identified, Mr Mayor, beyond this room that would be competent and might go some way as to dealing with some of the discord and management issues that presently exist, because I do not believe at this point that those management issues are going to be resolved. That is my concern, and I would suggest that is the concern of many Aucklanders. So I simply make a plea for some more time so that on my part I can consider the circumstance. I would like to be briefed, as Councillor Lee has indicated, and I do not think we've been adequately briefed at this point. Thank you.
We're going around in circles, but I've got 4 more questions, and I think given the complexity of this, it may well be that we get to the stage where we move this and defer item D because it looks like a rushed responsibility is not, my clever idea of a quick way out is not a clever idea. So, and I don't think the three who put their hands that want to be accused of being kind of railroaded into this. So more sensible proposals. That way when you're on, there will be no questions, and that's a good thing. But I've got Councillor Hills coming. Please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I didn't want to call a point of order for relevance because I know you're trying to get everyone's views, but what I feel is being debated is far more complex than appointing people, and that is not going to come to the appointments. That kind of information is not going to come to the next governing body either. We're going to be left with the exact same parameters as what we're sitting. So you made a call before, asked for members to put their hands up. There has been a long time to consider. I just worry that if we defer this, we're going to have the same debate and arguments again, which is not actually based on the paper in front of us. The times we get to debate that is on the operational plan, or if we ask for a review of our part in the Te Puna Maunga. But right now we're debating just appointing members, and I think we're getting distracted. I think it's been an hour now almost on this one item.
I think that the paper was quite clever. It just says we will delegate that, and I'll leave it at that stage at the moment, but we now know there is interest within the board. But I'll go to Councillor Fuli.
Kia ora, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Hills, for putting that in a nutshell, which was sort of the point I was going to make, is that we're really here just talking about appointments, and I totally acknowledge all of the issues that were raised by Councillor Fletcher and others, because there have been controversies in the last term, but those, as Councillor Hills said, are not things that we're considering today. We're only considering the appointment of three good councillors to sit on this authority. And I think if you object to these three, then it must only be because you think they're not competent to do the job. And I totally support the three who've put their hands up. I know that we were asked at the very first conversation about these things that we had with yourself, Your Worship, and then the follow-up conversation that we had when we did see the list. And I was one of the names on that Tupuna Maunga Authority, and I did say that I didn't want to be on it because I knew there were others with more maunga in their area that would have more of an interest, and I stepped aside so that that could happen. But I have complete faith in the three who've put their hands up, and I also appreciate as well, Your Worship, that you've attempted to make things simpler for us in terms of processes. And that this is one thing that doesn't need to go to next week. It doesn't need to go to another process through the appointments committee that I am a member of as well. I think we can simply resolve it here. And people just need to consider whether or not you think that the three people who've put their hands up to be appointed are competent to be on that authority. And if you don't think they are, then don't vote for them. But if you think that they are, then vote for them. Kia ora. Thank you, Your Worship.
Yeah, it's got complicated like most things. Well, I'll have Councillor Filipino, Councillor Henderson, then I think we might just go back to what we're debating in the first place, because it doesn't seem as though a rush decision will be a good decision here, and that doesn't in any way reflect upon the people.
Your Worship, point of clarification, is this moved and seconded? Are we...
No, it's not actually.
No, that's
so
fine.
at the moment, the substantive thing on the wall is what's moved and seconded. Okay? So I was just doing a little debate, but I've now discovered there is more interest than what I'd thought. So, Councillor Filipino, you've got to speak, and still debating what's in front of us on the board.
So thank you, Your Worship. And Your Worship, to make things simpler, and that's exactly what I'm all about, is to make things simpler. I will move the recommendations and ask for a seconder, whether it be you, Your Worship, or anybody else. So then they are on the table. I then will ask whoever the seconder is, so at least they are aware, that I would ask for their permission to end up changing D1, and that D1 get changed, that appoint the following 6 members, and D1 is to have the 3 who have put their hands up to be members of the Tupuna Maunga Authority. Well, but I mean, if that's the case, Your Worship, that's right, but that's my amendment, sorry, not amendment, that I'm putting it in there and seeking a seconder, Your Worship. So it's been moved, it just needs a seconder.
Okay. It doesn't sound like it's going to work somehow or other. So there is a move to amend the item. Is there a seconder to that? Darby is okay. I'll put the amendment, which is to try and sort it out now.
Yep.
Okay, so that's the amendment is that we make the decision now, and we haven't got, and then we'll have to amend. Then we'll have to call for who they are. But at the moment, the amendment is to make a decision now.
Yeah, the amendment, Your Worship, is to appoint councillors Leone, Bartley and Filipaina onto the Tupuna Authority. That is the only one on one. That is what I am asking, and it's been moved and seconded.
We have to have a debate now. You've moved kind of like a double movement that we are going to make the decision right now, and you've got 3 names that are being put forward.
I'd like to speak to that if there is a second.
So there's a debate about both parts of that. I'm reasonably happy to do it now, but I want to make sure that by just taking the 3 names that went up before, that's not stopping other people make other things as well. So be careful here, because if we get something or other which is tainted in any way, that's not going to make life easy for any of those 3 or the other 17 of you. So I've got Mr Henderson offering to enter the debate, Mr Turner offering into the debate, and I'm reasonably sure Mr Newman will offer in the debate. And Mr Watson. Okay, Mr Henderson, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I hope that we can all just unite and get behind this amendment, which I think makes a lot of sense. I would challenge any contention that this is rushed at all. I mean, for goodness sake, the Tupuna Authority existed last term. It existed in the election. We all knew when we walked into the Mayor's office that roles were up for your feedback, and you can go and give that feedback. There was every opportunity to put yourself forward in any of those things. We had several discussions. Also, finally, this came out on Monday. It's now Thursday. You had plenty of time to read your agenda, put your name forward, etc. I don't think this is rushed at all. And I just urge us to get this off our desk, nail these appointments today, get everything in place so that we can get to tackling the huge issues that we've been talking about recently, and more huge issues facing this council very, very soon. So let's just nail it.
Councillor Turner.
So, Councillor Henderson, you and I had coffee with Councillor Leone, and we talked about a lot of things in our area. I said to you at one stage there about the closing of tracks, and you. This is one of the driving discussions in our area, even though we have no mungas. It's all about trees, it's all about the forest, it's all about what people see as being important to them. As you know, I understand that Maori see the forest, the kauris, the big trees as their ancestors. A lot of Europeans do too. My great uncle, and some of my family all live at the very top of Mount Albert, my great uncle brought back olives from the Second World War and planted them on the Mount Albert Monga. I understand that I haven't read the agenda in its full. I'm sorry, I did not do my job properly, but there was a lot to get my head around lately. And when I'm sitting here and hearing the debate unfold, you're saying that if I don't vote for you, it's because I don't think you're good for the job. I don't know you, no more than you know me. We do it by assumption. When I first stood for politics, I was dressed up or portrayed as a chainsaw-wielding Pākehā fourth generation who just wanted to clear the land. That's not me. And I don't want to vote against you guys because I judge you for something you are not. So I put my hand up because I want to make sure that I'm there to know there's balance if I can't see it for myself today. Thank you.
Councillor Newman, I've got Newman, Dalton, Williamson and Foley so far.
I've read the Redress Act. The Act provides for 6 members appointed by Auckland Council. Whilst D Roman numeral 2 does currently foreshadow that there will be 3 local board members determined by chairs of local board with the maunga in their local board area, the Act does provide for 6 members appointed by Auckland Council. I will not be voting for a recommendation for just the 3 names as foreshadowed by Councillor Filipaina. I respect him, but if there is interest beyond that, I will consider voting for those 3 plus Councillor Turner, Councillor Fletcher and Councillor Walker, who I understand have put their names forward. But if it is the case that it's going to be 6 councillors for 3 positions, then we will have to vote and we'll have to go through a ballot to determine who has the most support amongst that pool of candidates. Otherwise, I just wonder if the mover of the amendment would consider an amendment further to add the 3 other names of councillors who have expressed an interest in order to move this matter forward. And that would mean that D Roman numeral 2 would have to be struck out. It would be councillors only.
Your Worship, I just reply as the mover to Councillor Newman. Is that okay through you? Just to reply to his request. Councillor Newman, no. I mean, if you wish me to strike out 3 local boards, so be it on your head, not mine. Because if we're talking about Auckland Council, and Auckland Council is the governing body and the 21 local boards, and you're asking me as the mover to give no representation for the 3 local boards, my answer is no.
Are you proposing an amendment to increase the numbers, or are you not? I'm not quite sure.
No, Your Worship, I'm foreshadowing that there is an issue here because what Councillor Filipaina is seeking to do is get agreement around 3 names that he has mooted. Actually, there's more than 3 names that have been expressed, as I understand it, so we'll have to go through a beauty contest if that's the case.
Your Worship, just a comment on clarification to Councillor Newman, if that's okay, again through you. Just a point of clarification. Councillor Newman, just to let you know, His Worship the Mayor was the one who ended up asking for people around this governing body table to put their hands up if they were interested in being the 3 GB members on the Tupuna Maunga Authority. Not me. It was His Worship the Mayor. He then got 3 councillors to put their names up. Then we ended up getting into a debate. So the clarification, and just for your sake again, Councillor Newman, is that His Worship the Mayor asked, and there were only 3 councillors. We now have 6. This is why I am saying that at least you know it was His Worship the Mayor, not myself. Kia ora. Thank you, Your Worship.
I didn't actually ask for the debate raged on and other people showed interest. And I think that the current one in sitting in front of you is based on the first 3. But when other 3 have shown interest as well, not initiated by me, but have shown interest, I think it would be disingenuous not to at least consider whether or not we should be, and if I was one of the three, I wouldn't want to be voted on under a circumstance which was under some question. So perhaps I'll try my informal thing again, which is not working very well, but I'm trying that. Would the three hugely object to having us completely open this up for anybody who really does suddenly want to be on this blooming monga? And I'm not one of them. I might declare my interest. Josephine, you're a good speaker on these things.
I would really support it being 3 councillors, 3 local board. So I'm not going to push and say, put me in there, but 3 councillors, 3 local boards, that's what I would love to see.
I hear that, so I'll go a bit further down the track with some more questions and things, but we've got 3 that put their hands up early and 3 that put their hands up later, and that looks clumsy to me. We've got an amendment with a seconder. We're still discussing that. There's opportunities for further amendments to that, but not sure. I'll take the next debate. Next person with a hand up is Councillor Watson, and we'll see if anything clarifies itself.
Jesus, like a 3 times table, wasn't it? I mean, wait another 5 minutes, we might have 9. I just Mr. Mayor, I'm trying to retain a relatively objective standpoint here, and just I think this is one of these issues where, as you get into discussion, you know, you find out it's bigger than it actually appeared to be at the start. And notwithstanding Councillor Hill's reference to, you know, the rather limited nature of the decision making, what did become apparent in the last term of council, and both with the Munga and also with the Hauraki Golf Forum, for that matter, is that there are issues that have come up that remain unaddressed. And of course, you cannot separate personnel from the issues. And in fact, I think the one thing we would all benefit from, I think, is you know, a discussion that takes in the various points that have been brought up by people in terms of legislative requirements, but also, more importantly, what's been happening on the ground for 3 years, because we didn't do that last term. In both those areas, both the Hauraki Golf Forum and the Munga, we didn't, as a council, look at a number of controversies that raging out there. I was out at Otahu getting shown round by the local people there. You know, I didn't fully get a full understanding of the whole issue, but I certainly got an understanding of their perspective. And a number of those people were Maori people, so, you know, it wasn't just you know, discontented Pākehā. So without any reflection of, you know, the excellent individuals that are up there in terms of councillors, I think what this last half an hour, whatever it has shown, is that we do need to reflect on this a bit more. And for me, I don't see what difference a week is going to make. I think in terms of the education and then the clarity that should come about of that. Otherwise, the default then is to go into a vote here where we've got double people, where there's people making pictures of one short or another, and we still don't really get to address some of the issues that I think are making this more heightened than it certainly has been in the past. And obviously people didn't make it clear to you, Mr. Mayor, during that fairly extensive and exhaustive process of talking to people that, you know, there was a burning passion to be on this, or else it would have been dealt with in that time. It didn't occur. It's occurring now. So let's just take that time to try and you know, get a little bit of perspective on this, and that might end up solving it. That's what I'd hope.
The other thing that might solve this is lunch. I'm going to adjourn for half an hour, and we'll see whether or not we can't come up with something which is less heated and more light. Thank you.